And of course, they said, yeah, what's the latest? So I'm going to share with you these three stories. Wait, that's the whole class? What happened to everyone?
No, they're coming. I think they're down. Did the Rebbe say Basti Laganian use olive spots?
Yes. Yud Shvat on the 5/7/11. Tafshin Yud Aleph.
Right.
The 11th month. Shvat is 11th month. The 11th day. Yud Aleph. Yud Aleph. Yud Aleph. And the 11th hour. Because it was 10:30 at night. The 11th hour was heading towards 11 o'clock. 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th year. Who was born on the 11th day of the first month. And in Yeshaya, Isaiah, as they call it in English, chapter 11, Pasuk 11, has the previous Rebbe's name, but Hashem will, Yosef, Hashem es Yodo Sheni, Hashem will add another Geula, referring to the Geula of Mashiach. The whole chapter 11 sounds like bankruptcy, chapter 11 in Yeshaya is all about Mashiach. That's the Haftorah of the last day of Pesach. It's all about the identity of Mashiach, what he will accomplish, what he will do. And in that chapter 11, Pasuk 11 of chapter 11 of Yeshaya, which refers to salvation, the Navi Yeshaya, is all about Mashiach. So we see 11 is very much connected to Mashiach. The Rebbe's birthday, the Rebbe becoming a Rebbe, and many other hints. I want to wait till everyone comes in.
Wow. So he actually accepted the Messias
After a full year. I'm going to mention the previous Rebbe dropped a few hints. The previous Rebbe never told the Rebbe openly. It was never a clear indication that he wants his son-in-law to become the next Rebbe. But he did drop a few hints. In fact, not long before his passing, he was telling the older Hasidim, you know who my younger son-in-law is? He has two son-in-laws. You know who my younger son-in-law is? Well, he's well-versed in the entire Babylonian Talmud, Jerusalem Talmud, and all the Midrashim, and he went on and on and on and on and on and on, and he started speaking about how great his son-in-law is. Obviously, that was a sign that while he couldn't say openly, I want you to select him as the next Rebbe, he did hint that he's very special, very unique. And then if you also look at the Maimer, I'm going to soon discuss it if I have more customers here. I don't like talking to the walls. Okay, so now we have 4 souls in here. I count myself down the 5th one. Let's see if we can get a minion here. That would be interesting. A minion of students, a minion of Neshamas, souls, holy souls from all over the world. What's your name?
Lida.
Oh, you're the sister, right? Your two
Yeah.
sisters. I remember you. Where's your sister? Am I my sister's guardian? Said that kind of heaven. Okay. He's your older sister, right?
Yeah. She's my guardian.
She's your guardian. And you're from South America again? Or I get it wrong. Argentina. Okay. Okay. So I want to discuss. I didn't prepare any any material to look into. To Hebrew anyways, and I think you could do better without just listening to me. Where to start? So the previous Rebbe, if you want to describe the previous Rebbe, I'm going to tell soon. You can soon hear a story and a recording from Rabbi Moshe Brisky. It's a fascinating story. But before we get to the story, let's first discuss the previous Rebbe's life. You could say in 2 words, he embodied self-sacrifice, Mesiras Nefesh. He was the embodiment of that kind of life where from his age of 11 years old, he was imprisoned 7 times. The first time he was in prison, he was nothing more than 11-year-old child. You know what happened? Don't cry. You know what happened? Why was he in prison at the age of 11? What did he do? Yes. There was a czarist, Russian czarist, burly, big, heavy dude, policeman, that was falsely arresting a chassid for stealing his calf, stealing a calf. And the real thief was the policeman himself. And when the previous Rebbe, as a child, noticed that this Jew is being attacked by this big bully policeman, this czarist, Russian czarist policeman, he went over to him, punched him in the face. And as he did that, the chassid was released from his captor. And of course, when you do that, you get in trouble. That was his first incident. A long story about how, more details, but this is the kitzur. There's another story. This is not the story I plan to tell. This is a story the Rebbe told at the Fabrengen. I was there at the Fabrengen when the Rebbe told the story of the previous Rebbe when he was in his 20s. This is probably, previous Rebbe was born in 1880, so in the early 1900s, probably 1903 maybe, 1905, he was in his 20s. The story happened where the previous Rebbe's father sent the previous Rebbe on a mission of Mesiras Nefesh. What was the mission? I don't know if you heard, the interior minister under the Tsar was a guy by the name of Stolypin. He was a rabid anti-Semite, and he issued a terrible, harsh decree which could have unleashed pogroms against the Jews. And the Rebbe's father, previous Rebbe's father, Avshalom Daiver, the Rebbe Rashab, sent his son on a mission, on a very dangerous mission, to annul this decree. How do you do that? How would he get in there? You can't get into there. No Jew is allowed in. Forget about a Jew with a beard, a religious Jew. There's no way. But he heard that this Stolypin, listening, everyone listening, or I'm talking to the four walls here? Can't tell, You listening? You listen. Please, I'd like to have your undivided attention. Bevakasha. Yeah? Good. So he had a mentor, this Stolypin, was a theologian, a big philosopher, a decent person, not a Jew, not an anti-Semite at all. And the only way he can meet him is by going out of town, but he would have to meet him on a Shabbos. So he left before Shabbos, and he stayed in a Russian anti-Semitic tavern amongst shikurim, amongst drunkards, anti-Semitic drunkards, a whole Friday night. Could you imagine a rabbi with a beard going into a Russian anti-Semitic tavern where they're all drunk and staying there a whole night? And he had to act as if he's enjoying there, because otherwise they would, who knows what they would do to him. The previous Rebbe had to play with them as if he's also enjoying their frivolous behavior. It was Mesiras Nefesh Mamachin to be there. The next morning, was Shabbos morning, he was to meet Stolypin, but how? Can you help me? He asked his mentor. I don't know what the mentor's name was. I can't. I would love to help you, but I can't. I can't rationalize with him. He's not a rational person. He's a little crazy. He had no respect for his student, Stolypin. But I'll tell you what, I have a pass. With this pass, you can go all the way in, up to his office. He gave him the pass. The pass was signed either by Stolypin himself or maybe even by the Tsar. So here's a rabbi, a full beard. No Jew is allowed to even go near the place. And can you imagine? And the two, Kozak anti-Semite guards that have guns, and they watch. They're about to shoot him. He shows them the pass. They go, let him go. He goes up to the second floor, and he doesn't ask him any questions. Where he has to figure out where Stolypin's office is. He just can't ask anyone. He's afraid to ask anyone. Otherwise, his identity will be known. He's a little scared. So he just looks around, and doesn't see any office with any name of Stolypin. Then he sees on the third floor someone walking out of his office, going to the bathroom. And he runs over as the guy, of course he was hiding from his hiding, so he could create a shadow. The guy shouldn't see him. And as the guy entered the bathroom, he ran into that office, and he sees, that's Stolypin. That's the right office. He goes in, sees two piles, pile of envelopes or letters, which had not yet been signed as a decree. It's pending. On the other side, you had a whole bunch of letters that were either, null and void, or a decree, or whatever. The other side was null and void papers. Any moment, Stolypin can enter. He's in the bathroom. How long was he in the bathroom for? You don't know. Be there for a minute. It takes time. He had to see, and he had to go through all the pile of hundreds and hundreds of letters of things that were signed. They were about to be signed. So he went into the left pile where they did not yet, which wasn't signed, and he finally, spending a few minutes, finds that decree and writes in Russian, void, nullified, and puts it into the other pile, void, and runs out, sneaks out, gets back to his father, successful. This is who he was. His whole raison d'etre of his life was Mesiras Nefesh. But it wasn't like the Mesiras Nefesh of Rabbi Akiva. You know the difference between Rabbi Akiva's Mesiras Nefesh and Avraham Avinu's Mesiras Nefesh? They both had Mesiras Nefesh. Rabbi Akiva was a martyr. What's the difference? I wouldn't put it that way. You gotta be careful what you say about Rabbi Akiva. I'll put it selfishly. He had a passion. You're saying, but you're right, but you shouldn't say it that way. Rabbi Akiva looked for Mesiras Nefesh. He wanted to have the schus of being a martyr. His whole life. When will I have the schus of giving my life away? Al Kiddush Hashem. It's a pretty heavy, noble passion to have in life. Don't put him down. But compared to Avraham Avinu, Avraham was not interested in having the schus of Mesiras Nefesh. He had one thing in mind: spreading the word of monotheism. And the previous Rebbe's Mesiras Nefesh was just like that. He wasn't looking for Mesiras Nefesh. But if he had to have it, he was ready. Not just that he had Mesiras Nefesh, he sent his Hasidim on self-sacrifice, and they didn't come back. They perished, only to send more. You know how hard it was for the Frierdiker Rebbe to send his Hasidim on Mesiras Nefesh? Much more difficult than sending himself on Mesiras Nefesh. There were 5 other times. He was in prison 7 times. The 7th time, of course, is with the most famous, which is we celebrate Yud Beis Tammuz, the day of his birthday, also the day of his liberation from Tsarist prison. He had a death sentence. He was the only Rebbe to ever have a death sentence against him. The Alter Rebbe never had a death sentence. It was worried he might, but he never had a death sentence. The previous Rebbe had a death sentence, number 1, was tortured in prison, thrown down a whole flight of steps. He got sick from that. And thirdly, who were the ones that arrested him? Jews. Called the Jewish section of the Communist Party. I never pronounced it right. Yevsevskia. How do you say? Huh? Yevsevskia. I can't say. I never pronounced that word right. Somehow I would get it wrong. The Jew, they were ruthless. They were more anti-Semitic than the non-Jewish communists. And here you have a story with Nachmanson and Lulav. Nachmanson, this lowlife, he starts jesting with the previous Rebbe and laughing at him and saying, you're a Zayda, your grandfather, referring to the Rebbe Marash, gave my grandfather a bracha to have children. I'm a product of that. But guess what? I was born through your grandfather's blessing, but I'm going to make sure you're going to have a miserable life. I'm going to cause your demise. Imagine a Jew saying that to a Rebbe. And why is it more difficult? Jews have free choice. Hashem can't intervene into their free choice. When the non-Jews, like the Alter Rebbe had non-Jew in the non-Jewish world starting up with him, they don't have free choice. The Rebbe brings the example with Reuven. Reuven tells Jacobson, Yaakov's son, not Reuven. So Reuven tells his brothers, don't kill him, don't kill Joseph. Throw him into a pit. Pit of what? What kind of pit? Of scorpions and snakes. That's going to help. He'll die there. What's the difference? If the brothers kill him or if the snakes kill him, what's the difference? Because the brothers have free choice. Hashem can't intervene and stop them if they choose to kill him. The snakes are in Hashem's hand. So when the previous Rebbe was incarcerated, was tortured by Jews who were the worst of the worst. When a Jew goes crazy, boy, do they go crazy. Avial Gentile or Gentile. When a Jew goes Meshuggah, they go Meshuggah. You have an neshama. When your neshama decides to pour its energy in the wrong way, it goes completely wild. You just wanted to ask something?
The Alter Rebbe or the Frierdiker Rebbe that he wrote the letter to the not forgive them, but like don't go again.
The Alter Rebbe. No, the Alter Rebbe. That was the Alter Rebbe never had a death penalty, and he was never incarcerated or by Jews. Yes, there was a Masnagdim who actually caused it, but in when he was in prison, it was amongst the Russian Goyim that And then he was never tortured. They never tortured him. They never touched him.
So this is maybe off the subject, so,
There's no subject today. There's no, you can't go off.
so, okay, so these three people that did this to the president, had to take the law themselves too.
They suffered a lot, by the way. I think I was warned them that they didn't suffer. They suffered. They were themselves were tortured later on. It went through terrible. When you do that, I mean, it's hard to, I mean, I know what you're asking, but I'm not going to try to answer it. I don't know. These are below the line. Below the line when you attack and touch a rebbe of all people, a tzaddik. You're in big trouble. And they had a terrible ending. They lost their lives and they're executed. Nachmanson and Lulav, two. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into the long story. It's a long one. I will share with you before I get to the story I wanted to record. Phenomenal story. I will share with you something interesting. The previous Rebbe came to America, before he came to America for good, he came to visit America for 10 months in 1920. Second time was in 1940. 1929, he went through a lot of different cities, as far west of either Chicago or St. Louis. He was in the Northeast a lot. He was in Boston, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, I believe, Cleveland. He set networks of yeshivas in the Northeast, in Buffalo and Rochester. That's where my brother is, in Buffalo. I mean, tens, maybe dozens of yeshivas, but learning. As soon as he came here, this is before he arrived. The story goes that when he was released from prison in 1997, before he came into America that year, right away he was exiled to Latvia, and then from there to Warsaw, and then from there to the suburb of Warsaw called Otwock. This was later on, actually, in the late 1930s. But in 1929, he visited America, and he was there for 10 months. And the story I'm going to share with you is when he came to Philadelphia. Phenomenal story. My father had the schus to have a chiddush, a private audience for his bar mitzvah. My father was bar mitzvah in the year 1929. He was born in 1916. 1929, when the previous Rebbe was in America, my father got the schus of having a private audience with the previous Rebbe. I had private audience with the Rebbe 8 times for my birthday, one-on-one. Little me and the Rebbe, one-on-one for about a minute, not longer. My wife also had yichidus. Not as often as I did. I had every single year from the time I was bar mitzvah until 21, I think. 8 times. I think it was 8 times. Including when we came back from Shlichus from Miami. We were buffering 11 buffering. The Rebbe sent to Miami Beach, Florida, to build a yeshiva. We were there for 3 years. We came back after 6 months. We came back just for a visit before Pesach. And this is usually the yechidus was before our birthdays. My birthday is not near Pesach, but because we were shluchim, we had the schus of going into the Rebbe. And this is a side point completely. And the Rebbe gave us pretty much the same bracha, but not everyone got everyone got one bracha that was the same. It should be a moifes, a wonder for everyone, for the public. He quoted a pasuk in Tehillim. That was the year, a pasuk that the Rebbe's capital was that year. And he quoted the pasuk, Kemoifes ha'yisil rabim, like a banner, a wonder I was for many. And he wanted us that bracha should be fulfilled in us too. We all got that bracha. I remember, just this is totally off the subject, but what I'm talking about, I just want to throw in that in the Yechidus, I complained to the Rebbe, I have a problem, a major problem. I can't sleep. I have acute insomnia, and I cannot sleep, and it's affecting my shlichus. I need a bracha not to have that problem. And the Rebbe looked at my settle, at my paper that I wrote. He got shaken like this. I don't know what that was for. It was scary. And then the Rebbe said, and as he was talking, you could mamish feel like someone's talking through him. And that which you ask about your health, if God should give you health, materially and spiritually and spiritually and materially and spiritually together simultaneously. And boy, did that help. After that, Yechidus, I couldn't stop sleeping. I had no problem to fall asleep anymore. Slept like I never slept before. And of course, that helped me in the sleepless. I wasn't anymore. It was terrible. I used to watch my roommate go to sleep, every move he made during his sleep, and watching Nugget watch him getting up. I was wide awake an entire night. Go try to function the next day. Now I have like 4 or 5 hours sleep every night, so I'm able to function. But but then, anyways, that's just totally. So there's sometimes, not always, sometimes less, sometimes more.
So when
You can't tell what I look like.
when
Yeah,
the Rebbe spoke, it felt like somebody was speaking through
it
him.
felt certain yechidus tone that you can't mimic. It felt like it was so surreal, but so holy. It makes Yom Kippur like a Wednesday. Being with the Rebbe, you felt elevated more than you would feel on the highlight of Yom Kippur at the end of the day of Yom Kippur. Mila. It was such an incredible feeling. When I went to Eretz Yisrael for the first time Eretz Yisrael, you feel something, right? Yeah, I did feel nothing compared to a Farbrengen even, which is not just me and the Rebbe, and let alone a private audience where you walk in and gives you a look and he gets your whole picture. He sees you right through. He sees who you are. He knows you better than you know yourself. And there's always a little smile, a zayde, a loving smile looking at you. It's just incredible. It's an incredible experience. I can't even describe it. All I can tell you is that weeks before we were working on doing tshuva, because whatever looks at your forehead, you can see all the things you did wrong. You don't want to see everything. If you do tshuva, it erases it, and you can't see it anymore. So that's for the sake of being able to avoid the Rebbe's Ruach HaKodesh sight. We tried really hard to erase all the wrongdoings and really mean it. It was like Yom Kippur, but we had like a month preparation of making sure that you start becoming a different person. And also after the Yechidus, you were the same person right away. It felt like, wow, it was an unbelievable experience. Okay, but that's off the subject. I want to share with you a recording of the previous Rebbe coming to America. Tens of thousands of people were waiting to see him. He fought against the Soviet regime, one man, single-handedly, and won. And he had a death sentence. It was commuted to 10 years of harsh slave labor, and then 3 years in Kostroma. And he only stayed, then 10 days later, he was freed completely. But the miracles of, you don't get away with it. You have a death penalty, you're finished. And they tortured him. And he comes to visit America. He was okay. He actually looked very healthy then. He contracted the terrible disease of multiple sclerosis later on. He also had a stroke and a lot of terrible diseases as a result of his suffering. But you only notice that later on when he came a second time to America. In 1929, he looked very healthy, strong and healthy. He was pretty tall, relatively tall. So here's the story. I'm going to play it now. A recording by Moshe Brisky from California. My phone is not behaving very well, so it might stop. I have to hold on a second. Then I have 2 other stories to share with you. Personal story of my father, and then I'm going to also get to my personal story related to my wife more than to me. It happened on Yud Shvat in 1995. You know the story? How would you know the story? Hold on a second. Hold on a second, just 1 second. Okay.
Jim, we need a decision.
Just listen to the question.
Need Claire.
Has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
In 1929, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneers, who was living in Latvia after having been exiled by Russia from the Bolsheviks, he took a 10-month trip to the United States. This was before he moved to the United States. He moved in 1940, but in 1929, he visited for a 10-month period. Some 55 years later, an article appeared in the newspaper called the Jewish Press, and it talked about the events of that 1929 visit to the United States. And in response to that story that was published about that visit, there was a letter to the editor that came a week later, which I'll now paraphrase for you. And the person who wrote this letter said, I had the privilege of meeting the previous Rebbe during that famous trip of 1929. To this day, even in my old age, I think about the disrespect which my friends and I initially spoke about this great man. And I cringe when I think about it. The six of us were in our late teens living in Philadelphia at the time. It was before the Depression, it was before World War II, and we were enjoying life. We had all but abandoned our Judaism. Occasionally, we'd attend Reform services or join up with a Jewish youth group. We considered ourselves what we called progressive, enlightened, even superior Jews. One day, we read in the papers that a man named Rabbi Schneerson, known as the Lubavitcher Rebbe, had come to town, and that he would be receiving visitors at our home on 33rd Street. As we read the story, my friends and I talked amongst ourselves, and we said, who does this rabbi think he is? Who does he think he is? He's coming here to give people blessings and advice. Where does he come off telling American Jews what's what? We were upset. Let him stay in Europe. We'll ask them to come to our country and tell us what we should do. Give us blessings. And we discussed this with our youth group leader, and he said, look, if it bothers you so much, why don't you visit him and ask him yourself? You want to know why he's visiting this country? Why doesn't he stay in Europe? Make an appointment, talk to him, and ask him. So we figured, yeah, you know what? Let's show this old-fashioned rabbi a thing or two. And so on Sunday, we got together. We went to the address on 33rd Street in Philadelphia. We climbed the steps to the front porch. We see through the window the house was crowded with people. We rang the doorbell, and a dignified, bearded man came to the door and inquired what we wanted. And we said, we want to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. We have an important question to ask him. So the man took out a piece of paper, and he said, okay, what's your question? Well, we'd like to know if he really expects contemporary guys like us to keep up this old-fashioned religion in a modern country such as this. So the man says, you can see there's a long line of people waiting to see the Rebbe, but come in and I'll see what I can do. We said, no, we'd rather stay here on the porch. We're not going in. Barely a minute went by before the man came back and said, the Rebbe wants to see you right away. We were beyond surprised. We were ushered into the house, past the waiting crowd, up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs stood the saintly rabbi. He was tall, handsome, with gleaming bright eyes and a warm smile. His hand was outstretched in greeting as we came up the stairs. He showed us into his room, and he began to arrange the chairs around his desk to accompany the six of us. We offered to help him, but he insisted on doing it himself. He then looked up and he said, I want you to know that this is the happiest and most important moment for me since arriving in Philadelphia. And I know you're wondering about the people downstairs and why I invited you up ahead of them. The people downstairs are asking for my help. One man's daughter is not well, so I can pray for her recovery, but ultimately it's dependent on God's mercy. Another person has a lawsuit who wants me to pray that he will prevail. Do I really know who is right and who is wrong in that lawsuit? Perhaps I can convince him to pray for justice. There's a man that wants to buy a business and wants blessings for its success. There again, I can put in a good word with the Almighty. But if that would make it automatic, I would be a wealthy man myself. But your request, your challenge, your question, that's one that I must be able to respond to. Otherwise, I have no right to be a rabbi. First of all, the Rebbe went on to say, there are 613 commandments in the Torah. And while the Lubavitcher Rebbe tries his best, he finds that it's not always possible to keep all of them. There are many mitzvahs that can only be performed by those living in Israel. There are many mitzvahs that can only be performed during the temple times. Only mitzvahs, there are some mitzvahs only for a king, some for men, some for women. So I can't do all 613 as much as I want to. So what do? Do I discard all 613 because I can't keep them all? No. I keep as many as I possibly can. I do the best I could. And that way I get closer to God with what I can do. The Rebbe is saying this to us. We're feeling this tremendous warmth, this love, this concern that was coming through his words and his eyes. And this venom that we felt and the cynicism that we felt coming in was melting away. And he continued by asking us to try to do something. Study the deepness of the Torah and keep as many mitzvot as you could, assuring us that in doing our utmost, yes, even living in this modern country of America, even being raised in the homes you were raised in, you would be doing the same thing as the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The same thing. Each of us striving to do what we can to come close to God. He then asked us for our Hebrew names and the names of our mothers. And then towards the end, he asked for a favor. He asked if he could have the honor of putting on tefillin with us, which we all did. Every one of us, we rolled up our sleeves. As much as we were cynics coming in, we felt a bond with this man. And each of us promised him that we're going to live up to his suggestions, that we're going to try to connect, the mitzvahs that we can. And he then blessed us individually. He shook our hands and we left. We walked through the crowd. We went out the door. We stood out the front porch. And we stood on that porch for 2 more hours, shaken as we tried to process what had just happened. We all undertook to try from that point on to pray at least once a day. Another of us resolved to give up his Saturday work and give up so that he shouldn't work on Shabbos. Another one went on to become a Chabad Chassid. I can tell you that none of our lives were the same after that day. All 6 of us went on to raise nice Jewish families with a sense of joy and profound awareness that America is indeed no different. You see, that, my friends, that was the pintel yid, that was the spark within the soul that the Rebbe was able to connect to get beyond the division, get beyond the separation, get beyond the fact that they come from different continents and different backgrounds, and to connect that part of the soul. And when you ignite that part of the soul, the pintel yid, that spark of Judaism, reveals itself even more and it shines forth. So we hear when we speak a lot and talk a lot about Jewish unity. But when you think about it, what is the common denominator amongst the Jewish people? After all, we have different languages, different cultures, different nationalities. What really binds us together in an enduring way? At the end of the day, my friends, we only have one single nucleus. The only thing that truly bonds us to one another is the Torah and its mitzvah. Nothing else has proven capable of holding us together for more than maybe a generation or 2 at best. This is what first forged us as a nation, and it is the only common thread that has linked one generation to the next throughout the millennia ever since.
Enjoyed the story?
Okay.
Come again. Bring
Before I tell you another interesting story
to inspire.
that I heard from this woman herself, when she lived in Morristown, New Jersey. I was there. I lived there for around 17 years, teaching in the yeshiva there. So there's a woman whose name is Shipra Chandra Henry. Her English name was Canon, and she told me personally the story. He tells it much better than I can, but I can't find it. A while back I saw it, or much a brisky story. So I'll share with you the story how she became religious. Connected to a Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Hecht from Chicago, Rabbi J.J. Hecht's older brother. But before I get to the story, I wanted to first mention something about Basi Lagani. Basi Lagani is, of course, the first mimer that the Rebbe said, and the last mimer of the previous Rebbe. Now, the previous Rebbe, by the way, I forgot to mention that Yud Shvat is connected to women very much. First of all, it marks the passing of the previous Rebbe's grandmother, the wife of the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and also the Gimel Shvat, which was the second stage of the mimer. The Basi Lagani is broken into 4 different mimerim. Each mimer has 5 chapters. You probably know about this. Sure, you know about it. So the second time the second mimer was a mimer said on the 13th of Shvat, marking the mother's yahrzeit, the previous Rebbe's mother's yahrzeit, women. And what is Basi Lagani all about? I come to this is the shir, a song of songs, all about a love story, to Nachas and the Kala. Hashem is the chazan, and we are the kala. So it's very much about women. Plus the Maimer Basi Lagani, the role of a kala. It's interesting. One of the hints, just that the previous Rebbe gave at the Rebbe should be the next Rebbe, is if you notice, I don't know if you noticed it, but if you did, when the Mimer quotes the Medrash, what's the Medrash? Basi Lagani, I've come to my garden, meaning this world was Hashem's garden. When it first created the world, this world was a beautiful Garden of Eden, pleasurable world, a source of pleasure for Hashem. Of course, later on, things changed. There were 7 generations of sinners, starting with the Chedei Todas, Cain and Hevel, till we get to the generation of Pharaoh, not the first Pharaoh, trying the Pharaoh and Amram Avinu's son, which caused the Shekhinah to depart 7 levels all the way up to the 7th heaven, where godliness became completely. We were unconscious of it. We had zero awareness of Hashem being in our presence because of the Shekhinah departing further and further away from us. But it's interesting. This medrash is found in many places besides Shir Hashirim. But the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted you to look up. He says, "B'mekomo, look up the medrash, not anywhere else, but on the very verse that's mentioned in Shir Hashirim." What's the difference between how it's mentioned in Shir Hashirim or versus other places? It tells you the author, who said this word, that Hashem called this word a garden. This world was originally, when he created the world, was considered to be his garden. Who said this? Guess who? The one who said this, sage of the Gemara, his name is Menachem, the son-in-law of the Nasi. Does that ring a bell? Menachem, the son-in-law of the Nasi. So by the previous Rebbe saying, I want you to look up the Medrash, not anywhere else, but in Como, on the spot, meaning on the pasuk. In other places, it deletes, does not mention who said this. But I want you to know who the author is. The word Bimakomo, the gematria of the word Bimakomo is the Rebbe's middle name. If you add up Bim, Beis, Mem, Kuf, Vav, Mem, Vav, Bimkomo is the same gematria as the word Mendel. So you have Menachem, who's the one who said this medrash, that I have come to my garden, i.e., this world was once upon a time a garden. And then you have the word Ben Komo, meaning having the gematria, the numerical value equivalent of the Rebbe's middle name. Interesting. By the way, also the word Basi. You know what Basi stands for? I have come. How do you spell Basi? Aleph, Tav, Yud. Let's go to Chumash, Tilman, Tanya, and Rambam. What does the Chumash start with? Which letter? Beis, Bereshis. What does Tilman start with? Ashrei, Aleph. What does Tanya start with? Tanya. What does the Rambam start with? Yesoid HaYesoid Yud. Yesoid HaYesoid Yesod. Chumash, Tilman, Tanya, Rambam, Basi, I have come. Interesting. The Rebbe's first mimer is, this is a garden. This world is a garden. Don't feel, how can I change God's world? The world is filled, the world is so corrupt, especially today. People are nuts. The world is going going crazy. Mamish, crazy. A man is not a man, a woman is not a woman, a man can be a woman. I mean, the world is nuts in so many different ways. Right is wrong, wrong is right. Corruption is decency, decency is corruption. You're a race. I mean, it doesn't take much. People have just lost it completely. The world seems to going haywire. But that's what it looks like. Deep down, the world is a garden. Really? Well, maybe it once was, but it's not that way now. But how is it going to be? What's going to be the end result? What Hashem wants, he created the world for a purpose. The world can't fight against its reason for its creation. Every second that the world is being recreated, what's the engine behind that recreation? That it will once and for all eventually become a Jida B'Tachtonim. It will become a dwelling place. It was and it will be. Something that was and something that will be. There's an interesting halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Here's the halacha Rebbe brings in the sikh, which I didn't give you. I have a sikh in front of me. Someone steals something. Imagine if someone steals flour. I don't mean a flour, I mean a flour, flour to make bread. Or some eggs, a dozen eggs. And from the flour or from the eggs, flour, I made bread. Now, once you make flour into bread, you can't make the bread back into flour again. You know what the din is? Even though you stole the flour, once you change the looks of the flour into something new, the gunner, the thief, can keep the egg, can keep the bread, or keep the eggs. Let's say you made fried eggs from the raw eggs. You can't make fried eggs back into raw again, right? Once they're fried, you can't make it back into raw. It's an irreversible change. You can keep it. Just pay the value of what you stole. You stole flour, it was worth $10, you pay $10. But the actual result of what you did with the flour, you keep. When is that true? Only if it's an irreversible change. What happens if what you did, you make some kind of change, but you can easily reverse it back to the way it was before? For example, I stole some wood, I built it into my house, but I can very easily just detach it from my house. It's not like it became a new entity. So any kind of change that is reversible is considered like as if it never changed. And the Ganav has to uproot that piece that he built into his house and return it. He cannot keep it. It hasn't really changed. It's the same old thing you stole. So the Rebbe says like this: the world once was a dira, a dwelling place for God. It was a place of pleasure for God, God's garden, Garden of Eden. It will become like the Garden of Eden. In the interim, the way things are now, it doesn't look like it. It looks like the world is going completely crazy. But that's a reversible change. Not only could it change, it will change. It has to change. Because God's purpose has to be realized one day or another. That has to happen. Question is when, but it will happen. Therefore, even its present stage of being a total corrupt world, seemingly, is only to the eyes of the people who look at it. But deep down, in the you say in the intestines of the world, deep down, the world is actually a garden. It hasn't yet surfaced, but it's going to be. So just like the Ganav, when you try to change something, but it's a reversible change, it's as if nothing happened, nothing changed. This world once was beautiful, it will be. The fact that now it doesn't look like it is meaningless. It doesn't change the fact that it's a garden. So therefore, do not feel, I can't change Hashem's world. No, this world was a beautiful world. It got sick. When a person gets sick, that's not who you really are. That's a sickness that got attached to you. In essence, you're healthy. This world was a healthy, holy, a place of holiness, a place that was conducive to Hashem's presence. But through sin, it got got ill. The world was subject to illness. I want to get back to an interesting story. Oh, the Rebbe also mentions about the previous Rebbe's name. The previous Rebbe's name is very much connected with the beginning of Basi Lagani and the end of the first mimer. First mimer has five chapters. Chapter 1 is all about this world is a garden, therefore go for it. Do not leave any place void of Yiddishkeit. Wherever you find Jews anywhere in the world, spread it. And do not limit yourself to only certain places where you feel, well, this city I can relate to. The people here are kalim, they're receptacles. But if I go elsewhere, that's not for you. That's not for us. We're not going to succeed over there. Always feel that you should introduce Yiddishkeit in every corner of this world. That's Yosef. Yosef means keep on adding. Don't be satisfied with the small accomplishments. Keep on adding, extending to no end. If you can find a Jew anywhere in the world that's not yet privy to who he is, does not know how great being a Jew is, please let him or her know about it. Spread the word everywhere. Host Yosef, add. Yitzchak fits very well with the end of the first mimer. What's the end of the first mimer? Chapter 5. Don't think you have time. Just because the world will be anyway, God will certainly get what he wants. Do not think so. What's the rush? It'll happen anyways. Hashem will take care of the world. No, you have a shlichus. First of all, you don't know how long you're going to be around. Second of all, even if you would not know exactly, every moment of your life is a shlichus. You can't wait. If you wait, you lose that moment that never come back. Time can't come back. People are worried about their money, which could be easily returned, but they don't worry about losing time, which can be returned to them. Wasting a moment, that moment will never get back to you. And if there's anyone who really was concerned about not losing time, it's the Rebbe. Every moment of his life was so incredibly precious. Rebbe, when he traveled to, this is an off the tangent here, when the Rebbe traveled to camp 2 times, the boys' camp and the girls' camp. There was a flat tire, and that was delayed for a couple hours. 25 years later, Rebbe said, I'm still trying to make up those 2.5 hours that I missed 25 years later. Stories when the Rebbe that had a daven for the Yomid for his father passed away in 1944. The Rebbe used to daven for the Yomid. He wasn't Rebbe yet, 44. He davened for the Yomid. And 10 o'clock. And people came 10:02, 10:03. And the Rebbe was complaining. They told the preacher, I don't know, why he's complaining? We came 2 minutes late. You know what the previous Rebbe said? For my son-in-law, 2 minutes is like a year. 10 o'clock. Not because he's like, these yekkers. Everything has to be exact. Because he saw every moment of his life as a gift from on high. Don't waste your time. Become a soldier in the army of Hashem, of making this world a world ready for Mashiach to come. Do not say, well, Hashem will take care. I believe in Hashem. I trust. Yeah, then you use your bitachon. Everything will be okay. Hashem knows what. I'm sure I have full bitachon that He will make this world into a better world. It's not for me. Who am I? Me, I'm a nobody. That's when you shouldn't have bitachon. You have to be active. And don't just sit back and say it all depends on whatever Hashem does. Everything is dependent on Him. Yeah. He did it, but can't make up the fact he didn't lose. In other words, all the time after that he spent. But how do you make up what he could have done those 2.5 hours and couldn't because he was stuck on the road? I understand, but obviously wasn't stuck, but he wanted to accomplish certain things and he couldn't. Being on the road was Rebbe couldn't accomplish anything. He wasn't able to. Of course, he could still think Torah, but the Rebbe wanted those hours to change the world, and he felt that he wasn't able to do it. You're right. The Rebbe always says no one is stuck anywhere. That's a famous bunch of women who were involved in a Shabbaton. They got stuck in Detroit. You know the story. The Rebbe said, "What does the word stuck mean?" They were confused. The Rebbe doesn't know English. I know what the word stuck is. Are Jews ever stuck? Shlichus.
How do you bring shlichus on the road or wherever it was?
You find out sometimes. But the Rebbe wanted every moment to be used, and he was granted there. He couldn't do anything. Okay, obviously that itself is a shlichut. You're right. Looking at it, you have to look at it as if it was meant to be. But the Rebbe wanted to accomplish, and he felt it's okay. If a person wants to make up those hours, that's fine. Don't complain and say, why did God do this to me? That wasn't complaining. He just felt, I would like to make up those hours that I couldn't do it. Wasn't complaining about Hashem. Why did this happen to me? Yes.
What were the names of the 6 boys? Or
What?
What were the names of the 6 boys that came to the
I don't know. That's one.
No.
I don't know. I could find out for you, but I don't know offhand. They all were played. I don't think they're alive anymore, but they all became completely showing mitzvahs. One of them became a Lubavitcher. And they were so cynical, so venomous towards, a frum Jew in America. Who are you? Have you heard the story? But I want to tell you another story. 2 more stories. One other story is in 1943, there were 2 Bacharim who were hanging around 770 elevator. You know what the elevator is? On the 2nd floor. If you the Rebbe's office with the Rebbe's, but on that floor, you'll notice right near the door that opens up to they call Gan Eden HaTachton, the door that opens up to a hallway to the Rebbe's room. Before that door, there's an elevator. If you go from the previous Rebbe's floor, it's an elevator going from the 3rd floor down to the 1st floor. Not in the bottom of 770 where you have the large hall, but rather upstairs. When you walk into the other entrance of 770, there's an elevator there. Not much of a difference where it was, but there were 2 boys that were schmoozing, in the hours in the middle of Seder, in the lunch hour break, they were schmoozing, and the Rebbe comes down. He was called the Ramash. His name, abbreviated of his first and last name. The Rebbe's first name, and then his last name, Schneerson, Ramash, Reish Mem Shin. He was called the Ramash. But they had a lot of respect for him. Father used to tell me his eyes gave it away. He tried to fool you. He wore a short jacket, It was even a gray jacket, a gray hat. He had a newspaper in his pocket all the time. And he really tried to fool you that he's a nobody. He's not just a regular guy. My father, but he failed miserably. I didn't fall for it. Right away, you could see that he was, someone shoulder and high above the whole crowd. It was not like a regular, didn't mingle. I mean, he tried to mingle, but you could see right away this is someone putting on an act. Very good actor, but you could see right through the act that he wasn't a regular person. Anyways, Ramash comes down and he says, "Hey guys, Rabbi Edelman and Rabbi Folkerman, both in Massachusetts, Shluchim. They passed away about 5 years, 6, 7 years ago. They were around 90 when they passed away. Well, now they're 17 years old in 1943. And the Rebbe says, you want to hear the latest news from my father-in-law? I just came down from his office. Yeah, of course we want to hear. You know what? I'll tell you what, I'm always makar of people. I always smile and I'm very generous and I'm welcoming, even to people that are clearly not religious. And they're, in fact, I was desecrating the Shabbos and they walk in from their cars and I don't tell them anything. I just embrace them with love and don't judge them. I'm not judgmental. And I'm getting complaints from older Chassidim that are twice my age, that I was very young in 1943. And I'm telling me, you're doing wrong. You got to tell them that you got to tell this guy, you shouldn't feel like he has a hechsher, a supervision from a rabbi, that what you're doing is okay. By saying nothing, silence is tantamount to admitting it's okay. He just came out of his car on Shabbat. You're saying nothing to him? You got to tell the guy in a nice way, but you got to tell me what he's doing is wrong. He shouldn't come anymore on Shabbos. I began to think maybe I'm wrong. I don't know who. After all, they're older than me. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm wrong. So I decided once and for all, I'm going to ask my father-in-law who's right. So I went upstairs. I was just upstairs, and I asked my father-in-law who's right. My father-in-law gives me the following example. Starts with a parable. Says we see that parents love their children. A child is born, and the love the parents have for their first child is unbelievable. This child made them into parents. And you can see how they care more about the baby than they care about themselves. Their whole life, it's unlimited, infinite love. You think a second child is born, it'll be a little diminished. There's no room for so much love, right? So I guess the first child takes away a little bit of the love of the second child. No, the same exact love to the second child. Infinite love. And to a third child, and so on. Then he gets very serious if he gets that. When a mole, he says in Yiddish, a mole got gibar nakin, and then sometimes a child who has deficits, who's born with some kind of disease, whether it's a hand, whether it's a leg, whether it's in the brain, whether it's in the eyes, children they call on the spectrum. And to such a child, the parents show, he used the Yiddish word, an eigenartige Liebschaft, an extraordinary, out of the normal type of love, beyond the love that he showed to the other healthy children. So he continues. Likewise, Hashem loves every single Yid much more than a parents love their one and only child born to them at their old age. It's beyond we can imagine. Every single Jew, Hashem has a tremendous love. But then there's a child, a Jew, who was born with Nebuch, a deficit. Child doesn't go to shul. Yid does not walk to shul, does not use his legs for a mitzvah, does not use his hand and his arm for tefillin, has this deficit and that spiritual deficit. And to such a child, the Abisha goes, oh, compassion, oy vey. And the Abisha is crying, oy. Shows an eigenartige Liebschaft, a love that is beyond the love that he shows to the healthy children, to the frum kids. And you, my dear son-in-law, says the Friedrich Rebbe to the Rebbe, you should do what the Abisha does. So I found out that I was right. Story. The next story. Oh, just by the way, this Shabbat I heard a story. I wasn't planning to say this story. I just remember it right now. Rabbi Levi Baumgarten. There's a Baumgarten shul called the Baumgarten shul. His father was a tremendous chassid of the Friedrich Rebbe and of the Rebbe. I mean, the chassid par excellence. The time he had a yechidus, a 12-minute yechidus with the previous Rebbe, when the previous Rebbe could not talk clear, and he didn't understand. He heard words here, heard words there, but he couldn't make it out. Very few people, the Rebbe was one of the few people that were able to understand the previous Rebbe. You missed the story. I feel so bad. Okay, so what happened? He had a 12-minute yechidus, and he knows that who can understand the previous Rebbe after he had his stroke, after the multiple sclerosis. Who can understand him? The Rebbe. So Rabbi Baumgarten asked the Rebbe, who wasn't Rebbe yet, of course, the Rebbe was it's before the passing of the previous Rebbe, can you go upstairs? Do me a favor. Ask the previous Rebbe what he said. And I want to know what I said, it must have been things that I need to know. I couldn't understand him. I just couldn't make it out. I made out a few words here, a few out of it, but I couldn't put sentences together. Can you help me? So the Rebbe gets up like this, closes his eyes, and he said in Yiddish, "Medafnish, we don't need to. I don't need to go up there." And he starts telling him the entire Yechidus, word for word. Now Rabbi Baumgarten said, "Yeah, I heard it. Oh, that's what the Rebbe." How did he do that? The Rebbe, before he was Rebbe, was displaying open Ruach HaKodesh to Rabbi Baumgarten by saying word for word what the previous Rebbe told him. How would the Rebbe know? That's the story. You heard the Shabbat, the story I wanted to share with you. But the other story, the phenomenal story. In 1943, I just want to mention the Rebbe's middle name, Yitzchak, is connected the idea of zerizus, zeal, simcha, joy. Why was Yitzchak called Yitzchak? Whoever would hear about the birth of Sarah, as Sarah gave birth to a child, will everyone was so happy, joyful. His birth caused happiness and joy throughout the entire world. Even, and back when he was born, other women who couldn't have children were able to have miraculously able to have children. Barren women who had sick children, had healthy children. If they miscarried, they didn't miscarry. So a lot of simcha was brought into the world. So Yitzchak, the middle name of the previous Rebbe, I'm named after him. The middle name is a name of not just being joyous and being happy yourself, but it should be contagious. Other people should see you and just look at you, and the laugh and the joy should also be felt by them. How do you make other people happy? Sometimes you have to give a person, things that they think are important, material. Give the person a favor in Gashmias. Sometimes the person is not a keli to enjoy a Maimer Chassidus or a Sikha or some Torah thought in Gemara. That person needs money and needs to have a favor. So make that person happy materially. And the Rebbe says, do not underestimate the value of making people happy. There's a story in Masechta Tainis. I got to share it with you. I learned it once in one of the Gemara classes. Masechta fast days, it's called. Masechet, it relates to fast days. Page 22. Guy, name is Rabbi Broka, is walking in the street, and he meets Eliyahu Hanavi, and he asks Eliyahu Hanavi, is there anyone here walking in the street that's an automatic given that he's going to that he's a ben olam haba, that he's a person who is an olam haba type person, is going to get his world to come for sure, guaranteed he'll get his world to come, and nothing will ever change. Whatever he'll do, he'll still be worthy of olam haba. And these are people in the street people. And guess what? Yeah, those two people. Who are they? Go find out. He runs over. What do you guys do? We're comedians. We make people happy. And not happy because they share a Dvar Torah with them. Happy about, he's funny. Clean jokes, but funny. And people get so full of laughter, they're able to become better people. When you're happy, you can serve Hashem also much better. And you can live a much better, healthier life. Because these two people were comedians and successfully made people happy on a very low level of happiness, just happy about their material life. They're automatic candidates for Olam Haba, and nothing they will do, guarantee they won't mess up their chances of getting Olam Haba. Now Hashem never gives a person while a person's alive a clean guarantee you're going to succeed. A person can always mess up his life. Until the person dies, you never know what's going to happen. Even a tzaddik Hashem doesn't trust that they're going to remain that way for the rest of their lives. You have stories with tzaddikim that went off completely. But yet, these two jokers, comedians, because of rejoicing with people, they'll never lose their Olam Haba, no matter what they do. I'm guaranteed they're not going to do anything that they're terribly wrong to lose their Olam Haba. So the Rebbe says, Yitzchak, what Yitzchak all about. Yosef, Yitzchak, put the two names together. When you're Yosefing, when you're doing Yosef, and increasing and never happy what you did yesterday, you can think, okay, at first I was excited, but now, whoever wants me to do it, so I'll do it. No, simcha. But how hard the job seems to be in your Yosef, in your avoda of adding, continue to add with joy. Let the Yosef be with Yitzchak. And not just you should be happy, but the happiness should also be affecting other people as well. Then there is, that's the Yitzchak in the Yosef, but then there's a Yosef in the Yitzchak. That in the beginning you make people happy just because you've helped them out. Or you're funny and they enjoy and they get a kick and enjoy you. But then you should add a deeper level of making them happy. Eventually try to make them happy in being a Jew, being Jewish. Let them be happy with Yiddishkeit. Let them be happy that a Jewish kid was born Begashmias or born Beruchnias. Let them be happy about their spiritual life. That's a Hosafa, that's a Yosef in the Yitzchak. Let the Yitzchak, you being happy and causing others to be happy on a new level, Keep on adding in your job of making other people happy. Here's the other story. 19-year-old girl, her name is Karen, lives in Minnesota, works in the Chabad house in Minnesota, but Rabbi Moshe Feller. A great speaker, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Hech, who was the key, him and my father were the two greatest, best speakers in Chabad at that time, about the same age. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Hech was also a big scholar, Torah scholar, and also tremendous oratory skills. He's coming to a Shabbaton, no, you don't want to miss it. This girl was not interested. She had her grandfather was from, but that was about it. And she wasn't interested in fact, Friday night, we're going out having, we're gonna have some fun with all her friends. She wanted to finally leave and not be involved in that Shabbaton, but they asked, you better, you don't know, this guy is really good, he's not like any other rabbi. Make a long story short, she finally acquiesced and decided, okay, I'll stay. Reluctantly. He gets up at I'm skipping a little bit because it's late. He gets up and starts speaking. And he says, I want to tell you, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know really why I'm saying this, but I feel that sometimes souls that are no longer with us sent some speaker as a intermediary to bring back the relatives of this person who passed away. So maybe I am doing that right now. I don't know. Perhaps there is a reason why I'm going to be saying what I'm saying. And what did he do? He described his last yichidus that he had with the previous Rebbe in 1946. This story is, I'm telling you, it's 1979. So he's going back, he said, 33 years ago, 1946, a year after the Holocaust, I had my last yichidus with the previous Rebbe. But before I had the yichidus, I also brought a 9-year-old, I also brought I brought one of my balabatim, one of my daveners in my shul. His name was Rabbi Broida, an American rabbi, a modern Orthodox rabbi, who his whole job after the Holocaust was to try to rebuild all the ruins. And he collected $180,000. This is back in the 1940s. A lot, that's like tens of millions of dollars today. For the ruins to rebuild the devastation of the people that Nebuch lost their lives and lost their homes and lost everything, lost their family. And that was his, it was a very, 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 had a tremendous amount of success in what he was doing. It's a long story, but he saw a 9-year-old child, one of his visits to France, who lost his kid, who Nebuch lost his whole family. And the kid asks, wants to know whether he is from America. Yeah, I'm from America. Do you know the Lubavitcher Rebbe? And I would love to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Well, I don't know what happened to that child. I don't know, but I do know one thing. After he heard how a 9-year-old kid has nothing else to ask for except for one thing, he would love to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This Lubavitcher Rebbe must be very special. I want to see him. So to make a long story short, he got a yechid. His Rabbi Hech arranged a yechidus for him with the previous Rebbe in 1946. In the yechidus, he tells the previous Rebbe whatever he's doing. The previous Rebbe is really listening, putting his whole heart and soul into what this person did, all the good things he's doing for helping out the refugees of the Holocaust. Then the previous Rebbe says, what about yourself? So he starts, Rabbi Broida starts crying. Rebbe, all my children are not with Yiddishkeit. I've gone off the derech. They're not with me. Rebbe, help me. And the Rebbe tells him, your grandchild will come back. And what does that sound like? Doesn't sound so good. Then he comes out of the room, he's crying. He's crying, he's like overwhelmed with the all right. And Rabbi Hech notices it. Then all of a sudden, Rabbi Hech is told by one of the secretaries, Rabbi Simpson, the Rebbe wants to see you. The previous Rebbe wants to see you. He comes in, and the previous Rebbe tells Rabbi Hech something that's really confidential. Your balabos, Rabbi Broida, came to me and And I asked him about what about your personal life, and he starts talking about his family and that all his kids are not from. And I told him that his grandchild will come back. Now, why would the previous ever tell me that? I don't know. Maybe I will never find out. This girl screams, I know why! Tears down her eyes. Because Rabbi Broida is my grandfather. And he sent you from Shemayim, from Gan Eden, he sent you to bring me back to Judaism. Well, this is an incredible story. Why should you have told this story? And if you could have picked something else to tell. In fact, you chose this story, and I chose against my will to be here. I was forced to be here. It's an obvious divine providence, and therefore that broke the ice. And her name is Shipra Khanna Hendry. Her English name is Karen. I know her very well. When I was in Morristown, I used to give shiurim in her house. A lot of women came there, and she lives now in Israel. She's a phenomenal speaker, very active in Hafetza. And this is her story. Mice with the previous Rebbe, last Yechidus. And Rabbi Hecht passed away a few weeks later. It was his last time that he had this public talk. Unbelievable Hashgacha Pratis no Mayo. I had to share that story with you. Good stories. Okay. I forgot to mention the miracle with my father, and I forgot to mention the story with my wife, which I don't have time for, but I'll tell you, the kids are in 1995, my wife was in a terrible accident. She still has a paralysis until today's day. 1995, Rabbi Lipsker, Rabbi Y.Y. Lipsker, was driving from a wedding that my wife and his wife went to, and his wife was sitting in front, my wife was in the back seat. And on the way back from the wedding in January, a very cold, hard, horrible winter night, from South Jersey, they were going up to North Jersey, on a 2-lane highway, and they noticed there was black ice, and there was a tractor trailer that was on the service lane, but was sticking out. And another tractor trailer, noticed that truck and made a swerve and jackknifed the whole highway and went out of his car. And meanwhile, he didn't have any lights on. You couldn't even see him. And my wife was a passenger in a minivan, which this driver was driving, and the minivan went right into the tractor, killed the driver on the spot. His wife and my wife were both in a coma. His wife was almost pronounced dead. In fact, Rabbi Majeski was there in the hospital with me. Rabbi Majeski is the brother of this. Rabbi Lipsker is the brother-in-law. Rabbi Majeski's brother, sister is the wife of Rabbi Lipsker. She was in a terrible situation. My wife was also. In fact, my wife was not even noticed. They were about to smash. They didn't even realize there was a third person in the car. They were about to smash the car into pieces. What happened was, miraculously, another rabbi, Rabbi Spalter, came by. Wait a second, before you do that, there's another person. I noticed she went into the car on the way back from the wedding. And she was like, sort of like, she was still combative in a coma. And you can imagine how I felt. 5 o'clock in the morning, where's my wife? She's finally back from the wedding. I said the whole Tehillim. And 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying to fall asleep. I can't fall asleep. And then I get my next door neighbor. He calls by my first name. Yosef. There was a terrible accident last night. You go, what happened? So-and-so is no longer with us. A very close friend of mine. We taught together. And your wife needs a big refuah shlema. Anyways, that's the story. I can't finish the story now. I'll finish on Friday because I don't know. I'll tell you the second half of the story, phenomenal story with the Igros Kodesh story, and you'll hear it if you come Friday. If you don't come Friday, you won't hear it. Okay? That's the personal story I'll share with you.
These are very emotional stories.
What?
They're very emotional.
Yeah, they are.
Why did you leave us on this cliffhanger?
Because I don't want to get in trouble with going overtime. Thank you. What? Local guy. Which country? Where's the business? Make sure he's good Monday.
What?
Oh,
yeah.
Huh? Take care.
Come back.
Miss you. Oh, I just love you. Thank God, it's wonderful. Beautiful. Yeah.